Hey everyone, this is my last and final discussion post. I'm sort of excited about this one. And this is discussion post number 2 in week 7. I'll be talking about communication and just discussing the process of interpersonal communication, as well as just touching a lot on the noise that gets in the way of everyday communication. I've done some research, an article that I found online that I'll be sharing with you guys about this outside noise, and just giving a few examples of this noise that I have experienced in my own communication with others, in my workplace, etc. So communication is the interpersonal process of sending and receiving symbols with messages attached to them. The key elements include the sender, the receiver, and the feedback that can be given at the end. So the sender is the person responsible for encoding an intended message into verbal and nonverbal symbols. The message is sent through a communication channel, which is then received by a receiver, who decodes and interprets the meaning of the message. There's an option for feedback, which reverses this process and conveys the receiver's response back to the sender. And this is where we get this back and forth type of communication. But communication is worthless if it's not effective, if it's not intentional, if there's not a means to an end or a purpose behind what we were talking about. So effective communication occurs when the intended message of the sender and the interpreted meaning of the receiver are one and the same. This is not always the case, therefore we should seek for efficient communication, which occurs at the minimum cost of resources expended, such as the amount of time involved to be efficient in your communication. But it's important to note that efficient communication is not always effective, and it can be vice versa. Communication requires effort and skill, but a lot of times we experience a lot of noise when we're having communication with other people. This noise is anything that interferes with the effectiveness of the communication process. Common sources of this noise include poor choice of channels, poor written or oral expression, failure to recognize nonverbal signals or cues, physical distractions, and status effects. So I did a research online about the psychological aspect of this noise and the psychological part in this communication that we have with people. And it talked about how psychological noise is a mental interference between the sender and the receiver. Some of the examples that this article talked about was like that one can have wandering thoughts, preconceived ideas, or sarcasm that, if it's not interpreted or approved of by the person that you're talking with, it can come off in a wrong way. So I found that really interesting because these are things that I think all of us struggle at some point to a certain extent. But just like really honing in on the psychological part of communication, because communication is everyday, day-to-day thing that we do, that we take part of, and it's sort of innate, it's in us. Like right now I'm communicating to you, but if I don't express things, or if I don't have intention behind my communication, it's pointless. But so 2 examples that I have experienced is that I've had, and these are examples that I'm trying to work through, I'm trying to get better at. I've always had a problem or a difficulty with articulating ideas. I tend to go like halfway and express whatever I'm trying to share with whoever I'm talking with, but I can't express it fully. It's sort of like, oh, you get what I'm saying? Do you feel me? Like, do you understand? It's one of those types of scenarios. So that's something that I struggle with, and so this is a sort of a noise that I experience in communication. And the second noise that I experience is my tone. I've learned that my tone can come off as aggressive, but that's really just passion, and it's not an aggressiveness that is negative or like bad. It's sort of like I get so amped up or fired up that it can sort of make people feel reserved or back off, and so it can sort of turn them off in a way, for lack of words. So I've realized that my tone needs work, and I'm working at that, and I'm trying to be more gentle and soft-spoken. so that I'm not so loud and demanding and so putting my foot forward. So these are just two areas that I think that I can work on, but they are a kind of noise that I experience in my day-to-day communication. Well, thank you guys for listening. I've had a wonderful semester. I've appreciated building friendships with whoever I was able to talk with in class. Thank you, Professor Aguas, for bringing some real life teachings into our class and for helping us just become better MBA students, better followers of Christ, and just better workers. So thank you. You guys have a good one.